Hi guys, today I wanted to dive more into the purpose of optimizing for LLMs or generative engines. So by talking to some people, I found that there are a couple of different pain points that you can solve by optimizing for LLMs. And initially I thought it was all about visibility, appearing first in the LLMs, making sure that your brand pops up first for any keyword that you want to find desirable. And very, very quickly, I found that there are a lot more benefits of optimizing for LLMs. You could have that brand visibility that comes up. So the more you reverse engineer the LLMs, the better your brand is going to appear. I also found that when you reverse engineered what the LLM thought you needed to do, you would actually end up developing quite a nice roadmap for yourself and your team. So for instance, if you had all these weaknesses that you didn't know about, once you get the weaknesses and then flip them into action points, you now have a to-do list, and that's pretty useful. And then I started talking about it a little bit more, started selling it a little bit more, started to try to understand what actually happens when you do those action points. And I found that the best way to think about why you would want to optimize for LLM is because every action that you implement increases your brand's trust somehow, right? And that's essentially the core of this video, which is how do we become trustworthy in a world where content and everything else can be generated at the snap of a finger, right? And I think having something like ChatGPT to survey the entire internet and give its opinion about you is a really good way to understand what the internet thinks of your brand, but also people that use ChatGPT to think about your brand. Now I've got this diagramming tool up here. I don't know exactly what I'm going to use it for, but I'm going to try and see if I can explain why developing trust is the actual activity that we're doing here instead of marketing, the typical marketing, right? So let's take a very like simple example of how business used to work, right? Here's you. This is your business, and you do stuff, and you do stuff well, right? And let's say you do something technical, like you build websites. And when you build websites, you do things like you link to Instagram pages and you develop a couple of social media posts, blah, blah, blah. And you get a customer, right? And your customer uses your website building services and they love it, They are a 5-star customer, right? So they use you and then they start telling their friends about you. And what they do is they go to their friends and then they say something like, this guy's great. He made my Instagram fantastic. So whereas this guy started as a 5-star website customer, he's now gone to his friend and told him that you do Instagram. So what happens is there's this little bit of disconnect where because somebody doesn't fully understand what you do, you'll end up having referrals that are not that strong because they didn't pitch your value as well as you created it for them, right? And there's this little bit of like Chinese whispers that happen here. Like you might have served the customer very well. They might have just been very busy. And because you didn't educate them or inform them of exactly how to refer your business to new people, they've ended up doing a really bad job at being an advocate, right? Now, the interesting part is if you take something like an LLM or ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity, blah, 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 I'm starting to forget the names now. If you take one of these LLMs and you treat it like your customer that is supposed to be an advocate for you, the way in which you try to optimize for it is a little bit different. And this is kind of coming to my point where I believe marketing is education. And education builds trust, but the problem is the world moves so fast and people in nature don't learn very quickly. And it's not to say that people are not intelligent, but they have different priorities, different needs, different stresses. So if your number one priority is your business and you're trying to get somebody who's going through a divorce to understand your service offering, like cut them some slack that, they don't really care about what you do. However, what's really nice about LLMs is people can go and research your business in their own time, right? So let's say that guy is struggling, right? And he gets like 5 minutes to sit down at his computer. He's like, you know what? I really do need that mortgage. I'm going to go research mortgage brokers the only way I know how now. And the way people search for businesses nowadays is changing. People are going to ChatGPT and looking for service providers and product providers. So he goes to ChatGPT and he says something like, a mortgage broker's near me. It's very easy doing a service request. That's why I use those ones so often. So he goes, mortgage broker's near me. Right? MB near me. Right? So what happens is you and a bunch of other people pop up. Right? And what's happening is that because LLMs are trained on the internet and a bunch of different other pieces of data, what it can see is what it presents to the customer, right? And we are living in a very technical world compared to the yesteryear, right? So it's no longer you do a business, you're a mortgage broker, you got the deal done, and then your client went and told somebody else how good you are at being a mortgage broker. No, what's happening now is your customer is asking for a referral from your biggest advocate, which is the LLM. So what happens is the LLM scours the internet for them. So people think of LLMs, being trained on the internet and then people using that ability. But imagine the LLM was on the customer side and it said, you know what? When you write that prompt, I'm going to do the best job I can at crawling through content and then presenting you with what I believe the best answer is. Now, along this train of thought, I believe that LLMs are going to become a little bit algorithmic because, we're building profiles on people and, people are going to have certain little different preferences. And over time, the way that search operates is going to get a little bit more like TikTok or Instagram, right? So it's not going to be very objective, it's going to be very subjective. Now, what can you do as the business owner? You can't really do too much to change their preferences, but you can do the best job at updating your content so that it is accurate and credible, right? And what's happening now is because LLMs don't have eyes, ears, mouth, they don't depend on sensory stimulus or very emotional things like humans do. All it can do is read what you give it. And for the first time, what's happening is everyone's content online is being scrutinized with a magnifying glass, right? So for instance, I'm gonna tell you a funny scenario that I found with a client recently. So somebody typed in, let's say they said overview of business X, right? Overview of business X. And you can write this prompt into ChatGPT for your own business, right? So overview of business X. And what happened was, immediately, it was a law firm. It said 1% win rate of cases. And this is a law firm that's been around forever. And they've had many cases. But what happened was when ChatGPT was asked to give an overview, it told the customer, me, who prompted it when I was doing my research, this law firm has won 1% of cases that it's ever done. And I'm like, that's so shit. Why? Why would they advertise this? Now, what happened was, on this website, they had a little animation. And the animation went like this, and it started at 1%, and it went to 99%. So it's actually a little slider, and it goes, and it goes from 1% to 99. The problem is when the web dev went in and made that graphic, they probably put in the placeholder of 1%. And because the LLM doesn't just sit there and go, oh, that's a cool little graphic going from 1 to 99, it just says, what did they type in? What is their win rate? And because they put in the placeholder of 1%, you're now telling customers via this new referral method that you have 1% win rate of cases. And because we're moving to more of a zero-click way of making decisions, so I've said this before, websites will disappear at some point. I'm bullish on that point. They are too much content to make. They're too much to design. LLMs are going to be doing all the work for you. It's going to become more of an agentic world. So why do you need, these graphics and, these numbers that blah, blah, blah go like that? There are going to be better ways to sell and encourage people in the future than websites. My take. So what happens is LLMs now go, all right, well, this guy's asking for stats. I'm going to go to his website. I'm going to say 1%. Okay, that's his win rate. And then when the customer looks at it, they just go, that's shit. Why would I want a 1% win rate lawyer? Wouldn't I go to these other guys that have at least, they could have less. Like instead of 99, they could be 80% win rate. I'm just going to go one of them. So because you have actually structured your content incorrectly, you have not built trust with customer via a platform that they trust very much, which is their LLM of preference, whether it be, Gemini or ChatGPT. And then the customer may even receive a worse service from a worse law firm. So if you think about it, because your content is not accurate, your customer gets a worse service, you don't build trust, and you also lose out on deals and all these other things, right? So this is where I kind of get to start thinking about it. It's about like the new role that is marketing. Marketing used to be about influence, right? So it's all about like, Robert Cialdini, he's like his book, it's like, this is how you encourage people to make decisions, blah, blah, blah. But when I'm talking through this, and this is a new service, and it is very hard to sell, and it's very hard to pitch this value to people, what I'm finding is that when AI and the world is all bullshit, if you can find ways to develop trust through your content and on your website and on your social media, that's the new game. The game isn't to have things that are like bright and flashy. It's now a time to be a little bit more accurate and a little bit more aware of everything your brand is saying, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to throw all of marketing out the window, right? The marketing funnel still applies because you need to go from awareness to interest to decision and action. I'm pretty sure ADA. But, things can still be colorful and friendly. However, there is so much that's going to be generated nowadays. So if you consider your business's content compared to all the content on the planet, let's say it used to be something like, this is your business. It was here, you, and let's just say for, diagrammatic effect, like this was all the content on the internet. It's probably not to scale, all the content. But now what's happening is your business relative to all the content in the planet is something like astronomical, right? Like you just can't keep up. You're like not even in the picture anymore. Look at that. Like it's a sad world. But all the content is made by AI. It's not authentic, right? So even if you are AI forward and you have ambitions to be as optimized as you can, the trick is to cut through the noise with a good signal and say something like, we might not be content generation experts like the rest of the world, but when we say something, we mean it. And the things we mean to say are valuable for our customers. And it's all going to go back, like I get caught up on it, everyone else gets caught up on it in their own business. It all comes back to understanding the scenario that your customer is in, understanding their problems, understanding their beliefs, their passions, their motivations, and then creating content for that. The problem now is your website and everyone else's website and all social media and everyone's content online is being exposed for the first time. So those things that you couldn't see, those little tricks that you made, maybe little SEO glitches that you did, they're there now and they're being shown to the world at scale. So what you need to do is you need to start conducting an internal analysis of your business's content. And you need to start saying like, hey, when the LLMs query us, what do they see? And when you start looking at your business from an outsider's perspective for the first time, it becomes a really powerful tool of what you should be doing to build trust. Now, I got asked recently on my YouTube, so if he's watching it, hi, do I do consulting? And this is essentially what I do. What I do is I survey your content that is present and visible to me. Like, I should know nothing about your business, but what I do is I survey your content compared to competitors via the LLMs, and I identify trust gaps. And when I identify these gaps, I then give suggestions of how you can build credibility. So if you think of it, the problem is a trust gap and your solution is an action point to build credibility, and then you have an outcome of being trusted in the marketplace. Bit of a waffly video, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any ideas of other content I should make or things you have questions about, just leave a comment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all the rest. Thanks guys, bye.